What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Did you know that most of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed? I'd like to change that. So if you've been around the channel for a while, you are not subscribed already, please consider doing so. It would really help me out a lot. With that out of the way, let's get into the topic for today's video, and that is just free agency. I'm just going to ramble for however long it takes me to get through most of the big ones from today and yesterday. I waited. I didn't record this video, late last night like I normally would. I waited until, things happened this morning, and it seems like we've gotten most of the things figured out. Obviously, we're still waiting on a couple of big pieces, specifically DeMar DeRozan, as well as, guys like Kelly Oubre, Danny Green. There's a couple of other, bigger free agent names that are still out there, and I'll get to them, later this week and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk about all the signings that have gone down today so far, and yesterday, of course, and just kind of talking about the biggest things that happened, and we're just going to ramble for as long as it takes me to get through this, so let's go. Just so everyone knows where I'm at, I'm starting to record this video immediately after Carmelo Anthony has agreed to sign with the Lakers. So we just got Carmelo, Malik Monk both to the Lakers news, and previous to that it was Steph Curry extending with the Warriors. So that's where I'm up to. Anything after that I might include in this video if it breaks, while I'm in the middle of recording, but that's where I'm at with everything that's broken so far. So every signing prior to that is eligible to be discussed in this video. So first of all, a bunch of guys decided to stay with their teams and signed big new contracts. Let's just go through all those really quickly because it's not as interesting. Chris Paul, Jarrett Allen, Norman Powell, Duncan Robinson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Mike Conley, Richaun Holmes, Gary Trent, Derrick Rose. Those are like the big ones, and the Knicks obviously signing Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel as well. We'll throw them in there. I don't have a problem with really any of these contracts. None of them look particularly bad to me. Shooting is obviously at a premium right now, and that's just going to be how it is. Players who can shoot are going to get paid a lot of money. Duncan Robinson basically made the Davis Bertans contract from last summer, and it's the modern version of the Ryan Anderson deal, just basically paying for a shooter. I think Duncan Robinson is better and a better fit for the current NBA than Ryan Anderson was, when he got his money, and hopefully he should stay good for the duration of that deal. And honestly, it's not that bad. 18 million average annual value is not a bad deal for Duncan Robinson, and I think that the Heat did a good job keeping him, because they could have very easily lost him, especially after making the Lowry move and all that, which we'll get to. Other than that, I don't really have a problem with really any of these contracts. Richaun Holmes coming back to Sacramento is interesting. I think he's worth that money, but I'm a little surprised that a different team didn't make a stronger run at him. Gary Trent back to the Raptors. I like that deal. Honestly, I thought he might get more. So 3 years, $54 million for him, I think is a pretty solid steal for Toronto. Chris Paul back to the Suns. It's a lot of money, but you had to make it happen, especially after the finals run they had. There's no way you're letting Chris Paul walk after that. Norman Powell, the Blazers had to keep him after making that trade and the pressure that Dame Lillard's putting on. Now we'll see if they make a big move with CJ McCollum or somebody else on the roster to really make their splash, because right now this team is not better than it was last year. And I think that's all. Mike Conley back to the Jazz is good. Tim Hardaway back to the Mavericks makes sense. Other than that, I think those are like the big guys who are staying with their team. Campaign back to the Suns, JaMychal Green to the Nuggets. I think that's about it. So let's move on to guys who switched teams. The big guys who switched teams, both of these were right at the start of free agency yesterday. Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball. Lowry in the sign and trade to the Heat. We don't, I believe, know the full terms. We know it's involving Precious Achiuwa and Goran Dragic. I have not seen any picks going back to the Raptors as far as I'm aware. There might be like a second round pick involved, but I think it's just that. And then Lowry is signing for $90 million over 3 seasons. So $30 million a year for Kyle Lowry to, maybe not finish out his career, but get him close. He's already 35 years old, and he's got 3 more seasons on the books now for $30 million each. So Lowry's going to have a lot of money in the bank by the time things are said and done. The Heat make a splash. They basically have kind of restructured their roster, around the core guys that are already there, that being Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and then now adding Kyle Lowry to that mix as well. And they also signed PJ Tucker. So they've restructured this a little bit around their core. Jimmy Butler also signed that big extension, so this is going to be the Heat for the next couple of years. Is this current construction of the roster? They don't have a ton of flexibility to make some moves unless they're making a huge splash trade involving somebody like Bam Adebayo, but I doubt it. Tyler Hero is really their only asset left, and they're going to lose Kendrick Nunn. So I like this move for the Heat. Honestly, I think Kyle Lowry makes a ton of sense for them. It makes them a lot better. He's going to have a great partnership with Bam Adebayo. I think those two, particularly their skill sets, will play well off of one another. and this is a team that's going to be a contender in the Eastern Conference. Simply put, they're going to be, you know, good, and they're going to be able to potentially win the title, you know, at least once in the next, you know, 3, 4, 5 years. I wouldn't consider them the favorite. I think, you know, obviously the Nets and the Bucks are both really good. The Sixers are still going to be good. There's plenty of other teams that are good in the Eastern Conference, but I think the Heat are going to put themselves in that conversation. We saw them in the finals just a couple of years ago, and in my opinion, on paper, you know, next year's team is probably better than that finals team. So we'll see. We'll see what the Heat end up doing, but I think that this is, you know, the Lowry move and then retaining Duncan Robinson and all that. I think it was ultimately a very successful offseason for Miami. And then I also want to talk about the Mavericks because they made some big changes. Bringing, you know, Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back is nice. Obviously, you know, you're getting him for around $16-17 million a season. I think that's a perfectly fair contract for a guy like him who can really score, he can really shoot, he plays well off of Luka. He's been good for them for the past couple of years. I like that re-signing there. Boban also coming back, you know, that makes sense as well. Boban is, I kind of talked about him in the Mavericks offseason preview, but a very specialized player. You know, he can come in at very specific times of the game, but it's valuable to have a guy like that on your roster. And he's also just pretty good. You know, his offensive numbers are great. He can't stay on the floor for a long period of time, but you know, when he's out there, he's really good for them. They also bring in Sterling Brown, who I think is a good addition on, you know, minimum or near minimum. And then Reggie Bullock is, I think, a great signing for them. You know, he is another shooter. They needed more shooting last year, especially after they traded away Seth Curry. And Reggie Bullock is able to come in there and you know, help space the floor for them. He slides right in. Whether he's going to be in the starting lineup or off the bench, I think he fits on any team in the league, and I think that's honestly a pretty fair contract for him. You know, around $9-10 million a season. Like I said, shooting is at a premium right now, and Bullock is one of the best in the league, so bringing him in I think makes a ton of sense for their team, and I think the Mavericks got better. And now let's talk about Lonzo Ball to the Bulls. I mentioned him earlier, and now I kind of want to go in depth. I love this for Chicago. I absolutely love this for the Bulls. I think they stole Lonzo Ball away. They didn't have to give up, you know, really any assets to get him. Obviously, you know, salary cap space, right? But you're giving up Tomas Satoransky and Garrett Temple, and I think it was like a second-round pick. They didn't even have to throw a first in there. So, I love this deal for the Bulls. I think it makes them better immediately. You know, they also bring in Alex Caruso in free agency, which is a great deal. So they're already making the team better. The Bulls did exactly what they should have done this free agency period, and that's just add guys who make them better right now. They didn't necessarily need to make a splash trade. You know, they have the optionality to during the regular season. If things aren't going well, they can potentially make a trade, but you know, things were not great for them after they made the Vucevic move, and now Zach LaVine's going to be a free agent after this year, and they have to do everything they can to keep him. Well, this is a great start because they're starting to actually build a team in Chicago now. They have some real pieces. Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, I love these additions for them. And honestly, I'm shocked that the Pelicans didn't just match that deal for Lonzo because, you know, they miss out on Kyle Lowry, you miss out on Spencer Dinwiddie, and it's like, okay, well, let's just match our offer for, you know, our point guard who was drafted 2 overall 4 years ago, and he's going to be entering his second contract, and he's still getting better, and his shot looks better, and we should just bring that guy back, right? Wrong. No, instead they're going to bring in Devontae Graham, who is way shorter than Lonzo Ball. He's not as good of a playmaker as Lonzo Ball. He's not as talented as Lonzo Ball. He might be a better shooter. That's about it. I think he definitely is a better shooter, actually, but that's really the only thing that he has going for him instead of Lonzo. He's already 26 years old. And he was not that good last season, in my opinion. He had that one really good year in Charlotte 2 years ago, but last year I didn't really love Devontae Graham on the Hornets. And you also give up a second-round pick to do, or not even a second-round pick, excuse me, a first-round pick. You give up a lottery-protected first-round pick from the Pelicans, and you know, who knows how the protections descend over the years, whatever. You might not end up even conveying a first. If the protections are good, then it might just end up being a second round pick or whatever, right? But I did not love that move at all for the Pelicans, you know, especially after missing out on Lowry and missing out on Spencer Dinwiddie and all the other good point guards on the market. Instead of just matching and bringing back Lonzo Ball, you reach for Devontae Graham, give up assets to do it, and you have Tomas Satoransky, who is like fine, but he's not amazing. So I'm not in love with what the Pelicans did this offseason. Really like what the Bulls did, and yeah, that's my thoughts on those two teams. Oh, and just 5 seconds ago, Chris Haynes says DeMar DeRozan is close to reaching an agreement with the Chicago Bulls. So keep you posted. If that breaks while I'm recording, we'll talk about it. Okay, yeah, wow, that was fast. DeMar DeRozan is going to the Bulls, so we're going to get some live analysis right here. It is a sign and trade for Thaddeus Young, I believe Al-Farouq Aminu is in the deal as well, and a future first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. So off the cuff, the Bulls get a lot better. The Bulls are going to be really good next year. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to, I wouldn't consider them a title threat or anything like that unless everything like gels for them really well immediately, but they certainly should be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. If they're not, that's a very big disappointment, because they should have made the playoffs last year after the Vucevic deal, but they weren't that good down the stretch. But they've added some real pieces here. This is like, they're a real basketball team now. They could potentially be a top 5-6 seed in the East. I think they have that kind of upside to potentially be really good, have a year similar to kind of what the Hawks did last year, adding a bunch of veteran free agents around a younger core, and you could end up being really good. So I think the Bulls are going to be pretty solid next year. Giving up Thad Young hurts because he was good for them last season, and he's a guy that you wanted to hold on to, but I guess you kind of have to do it. And the Spurs get a Thad Young, who's a good player. Aminu probably doesn't matter too much for either team. The picks is kind of a lot. The first round pick, as of now, we don't have protections on it. We don't know, if it's going to be protected, what year it's from even. The Bulls already owe 2023 to the Magic, so it can't be, I believe it cannot be 2024, and it can't be next year's pick because of the Stapien rule, so it would have to be 2025 or later, so it might go a while out, which is risky, right, because you never know how good your team's going to be by the time these picks start coming off if they're not going to convey for 4 or 5 seasons. So a little bit risky there on that move for the Bulls, but I think it's worth it because they are getting DeMar DeRozan on 3 years, $85 million. So pretty much everybody's locked up aside from Zach LaVine, and assuming they have a good season, I would assume that LaVine does resign. So the Bulls are finally operating like a big market team for the first time in a long time. They're really, it feels like they're going for it. So good for them because they definitely. It's been a while. So I'm a little bit reserved on the first round pick and the second round picks. That seems like kind of a lot in a sign and trade, but you got to do what you got to do. And I like this move for them. For San Antonio, I actually really like it because they could have just lost DeRozan for nothing. But the way that the market shook out for him, he pretty much had to do a sign and trade because all the other teams used up their cap space. And they get Thaddeus Young back, who's a good player, and first round pick in 2 seconds. So I really like this move for the Spurs. Rather than nothing, they end up with something, and that is always better. So I like this move a lot for San Antonio. Chicago, I also like it. I think this is a win-win for both sides. Okay, other stuff to potentially talk about. A lot of, veterans going to contending teams on cheap contracts. Specifically the ones that I like. Bobby Portis back to the Bulls on a cheap deal. I really like that pickup for them. Torrey Craig to the Pacers. I guess they're not a contender, but I like Torrey Craig a lot as a player, and I think he makes sense with Indiana. Patty Mills goes to the Spurs on a 2-year deal. Not the Spurs. He was already on the Spurs. He goes to the Brooklyn Nets on a 2-year deal. Same colors. You get it. I like that pickup for Brooklyn. Obviously, they, not that they need more offense, but you can never hurt having too many shooters. JaVale McGee to Phoenix. They needed a backup big, and they get one here. I talked about this in their offseason video, but once Dario Saric went down in the finals, they had a hard time, having somebody to play behind DeAndre Ayton, and JaVale McGee can help out with that. So good pickup for Phoenix there. Let's see. The Lakers signing a bunch of old dudes. Trevor Ariza, Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, Carmelo Anthony. Malik Monk is a steal. I don't know if that's for the mid-level or just on a minimum, but Malik Monk on a cheap contract like that, he's still young, and he's going to be the youngest guy on the roster probably. He's going to be really good for them, I think. I think I already said Ariza. Getting Dwight Howard back is also pretty big. So Lakers are just going to fill the roster out with a bunch of veterans, and getting Malik Monk on the cheap deal, potentially bringing back Talen Horton-Tucker, and that's going to be the Lakers next year. And they're just going to be, a lot of veterans, around, of course, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook. So we'll see. But a lot of players are going to be wanting to ring chase with the Lakers. Carmelo Anthony's definitely one of them. And so we will see how they fill out the rest of the roster. But I like what they've done so far. And then for my Golden State Warriors, getting Otto Porter Jr. on the minimum. I love getting Nemanja Bjelica also on the minimum. Not as much love with that one because I didn't think he was very good last year. But, stretch big. I think he'll be okay for them. So, and they have a couple of more, roster spots that I would like them to fill out. Potentially targets Danny Green. Patty Mills are already off the board. Of course, Andre Iguodala could potentially come back. Paul Millsap is another one. So we'll see on Golden State, but potentially a sign and trade involving Kelly Oubre for Joe Ingles, please. That would be great. I would love that. Other than that, Semi Ojeleye to the Bucks, I think, is a decent move. Zeller to the Blazers makes sense, but they need to do something else to really convince Dame to stay. Andre Drummond to Philly is hilarious on the minimum, because obviously he thought he was going to make more. He's not going to. Blake Griffin back to the Nets is a good move. Nets also signed James Johnson, which I like. That's pretty much it. Bruce Brown back to the Nets. Trey Lyles to the Pistons. Robin Lopez to the Magic. I don't know. All these are fun. I really don't think that there's been that many bad moves in free agency so far. Nothing that I really hate with a burning passion, other than maybe Devontae Graham to the Pelicans. That's probably my least favorite one, although I don't know if I would say that I hate that move, because the contract is really not that bad. But when you think about what the Pelicans could have potentially done instead of doing this, it starts to become a little more disappointing. But realistically, I think every team is pretty much doing a pretty good job. Free agency's been kind of crazy so far. We're not done yet. There's a lot of names left over, and I guess we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. Really quickly, let's do a rapid fire of who's left over. Kawhi Leonard, of course, has not been back to the Clippers yet. Everybody expects that he will, but Kawhi obviously takes his time. Victor Oladipo, Dennis Schroeder, Danny Green, Andre Iguodala, Kelly Oubre, JJ Redick, Justice Winslow, Dante Exum, Paul Millsap, Lou Williams, Ish Smith, Avery Bradley, Lauri Markkanen is an interesting one, especially because he was not included in that Bulls-Spurs sign and trade. Mike Scott, Enes Kanter, Kaminsky, Frank Ntilikina, Wesley Matthews. That's about it. Markieff Morris, Reggie Jackson, Hassan Whiteside, Brad Wanamaker, Matthew Dellavedova, Josh Hart, restricted free agent. So those are the biggest names that are left over. I'm sure there's more that I just skipped over. John Collins, restricted free agency, there's one. So we'll see what happens over the next day or two. Some of those guys that I just said might be signed by the time you're seeing this. Things are moving quickly, and Summer League is starting up. So NBA offseason is continuing to move along, and we've already got a lot of intrigue so far, and we will continue to have more. So there's my off-the-cuff reactions for the first couple of days of free agency. I'm sorry this was kind of all over the place, but those are my thoughts from the first couple of days, and I'm sure I'll be back with some more thoughts for whatever else happens over the next few days. So I will see you guys in the next one. And yeah, do the subscribe, like, comment thing. You get it. Bye. See ya.